that, I was involved in our reporting of our data for the complication that we're seeing after the COVID-19 vaccine. So I want to give a little bit of background of like what that actually is that we're seeing, and then how often we're seeing it, and what my personal experience is with it. So what the complication that we've been seeing is called myocarditis, which is an inflammation of the heart muscles. And so it's something that we see with some frequency in children even before COVID, where a virus or a bacteria or some other disease causes inflammation in the heart muscle and can affect the function of the heart muscle. Fortunately, in children, most cases of myocarditis resolve on their own with minimal intervention. Kids recover and do really well. Most of them have no lasting effects from it. And that's similar to what we're seeing after the vaccine. We've seen some association between the vaccine and this inflammation in the heart. That being said, it's an extremely rare side effect. And there have been a couple of really good studies published in the last 2 or 3 months looking at the frequency of it and what are the outcomes after this heart inflammation in people who got the vaccine. So overall, these studies have looked at close to 10 million people who got the COVID-19 vaccine. So they're very, very large studies. So we have really, really good data about it now. And if you look at everyone that got the vaccine, the risk of this myocarditis is around 1 in 100,000 people who got the vaccine gets this myocarditis. So it's extremely, extremely rare. So out of every million people, there's only a few dozen that are getting this myocarditis. And vast majority of people who got the myocarditis have recovered and had no lasting effects from it. It's mostly mild compared to myocarditis from other causes, which is much more common to have severe effects and affect the heart function. The myocarditis we're seeing after the vaccine tends to be very mild, even when we do see it. And out of those 3 studies that looked at 10 million people, I think only one of the studies even reported a single death from this myocarditis. So that it's extremely rare, and that was in an older patient that had a lot of other health issues. So in children, we're seeing it with a little bit more frequency in certain groups of people compared to when you look at everyone who got the vaccine at all ages. And the group that we see it the most is kind of young adolescent to young adult males, age 16 to 39 is the range where we're seeing the highest frequency. And then the kids that are age 12 to 17, so the ones that we're kind of most looking at, for the purposes of this discussion today, the risk is, or the number of cases we're seeing is around 60 or 70 per million people. So around 6 per 100,000, 7 per 100,000. Some studies have reported as high as 10. So that's still really, really rare. It's more frequent than compared to other groups of people, but still really, really rare. And again, vast majority of them had no lasting effects, and there have been no reported deaths from the vaccine myocarditis in that age group. So it's happening. There does seem to be association with the vaccine. We don't necessarily know how it's causing this myocarditis or why it's causing it, but it seems to be there. That being said, the risk of it is very, very low. And so as a cardiologist, I'm not too worried about it. And I'll be getting my daughter vaccinated as soon as it's available for her. Then going to our experience in our hospital and what we're going to be publishing and what we've seen is right around the time where the vaccine became available for the kids 12 and up in the spring, about a few days later to a month later, we started seeing this rise in cases of myocarditis. And we saw this cluster in that first month or two. We saw a total of about 13 cases of this myocarditis. And at the same time, we saw 4 or 5 cases of myocarditis in people that didn't have the vaccine. And so we're a little bit uncertain whether it's Sort of the vaccine is just making you more predisposed to something that's already circulating, some other virus, or if it's all directly from the vaccine. But we were seeing it at the same time in people that didn't get the vaccine. And then it kind of calmed down throughout the late summer into the fall. Since July, so August, September, October, we've only seen 3 more cases of myocarditis in that whole time. And only 2 of those were patients that got the vaccine. And so even though people are still getting the vaccine, now we're not really seeing as much of this myocarditis. That's just our personal experience in my hospital, so a relatively small data set compared to those big studies. And of the kids in our hospital that got the vaccine, 100% of them had full recovery. None of them had any significant heart dysfunction. Their heart function was normal throughout all of it. Only 1 patient had a little bit of abnormal rhythm, which doesn't even require any medications or treatment, and it has kind of settled down. So overall, we haven't really seen anyone get really sick from the vaccine in that way. And then compare that to the actual COVID-19 infection, we have seen hundreds of children admitted to the hospital with this multi-system inflammatory syndrome from the vaccine, or not from the vaccine, from the infection. And so we're seeing hundreds of kids get admitted to the hospital, many of them severely ill from COVID infection, but only this handful of kind of mild cases of myocarditis after the vaccine. And so I'll let some of the other pediatricians on the chat also chime in on what we're seeing from COVID-19 infections and the long-term effects from that. But the chances of getting myocarditis or inflammation in your heart from the infection is way higher than the risk of getting the myocarditis from the vaccine. And so, so we're still recommending it for all children to get the vaccine, including even our kids that have really complex heart defects, our kids that are already in heart failure, our patients that we're treating who have severe illnesses, who are just getting heart surgery, things like that. We're still recommending that all of them get the vaccine as well. So, so I'll open it up to the other pediatricians in the group to comment on the other things we're seeing related to the vaccine and from COVID-19 itself.
Hi, I'm Dr. Touchstone. I work in the emergency department at Children's Hospital of Michigan. And I agree that initially, when this first started, our children weren't getting really the disease, or it was very minor. Our numbers at the hospital, in the emergency department, was very few kids were coming in. And it was almost kind of scary because we weren't sure if the hospital was going to be able to survive the low numbers. Not that we want children to be sick, but we were noticing this nationwide. Then our numbers began to creep up, and that's when the MIS-C was coming into effect, and we could see the children in the emergency department being affected within the hours so that they were there. Some of those children were crumping really bad, ending up in an intensive care unit, or definitely admitted because of abnormal lab tests. These children also were getting the myocarditis, pericarditis, and they had not been vaccinated because they didn't even have a vaccine for children at that time. Afterwards, that kind of died down. And then after the vaccine, we had been warned to look out for children with the vaccination, especially the age group that was mentioned, because they may exhibit signs of myocarditis, which I think we might have had a few, but the majority of our children have had it without association with the vaccine that we've seen. Now we have an uptick in our numbers because the schools are open, and that one-on-one interaction, even with a mask, without a mask, you can definitely see an uptick in our numbers, and you can see an uptick in the hospitalizations as well as those who are ending up in the intensive care unit. We've had several throughout the time period, but we have several all at one time now, and several of them are really sick. So we are ecstatic that the vaccine is out, because it is truly affecting the children. And not only does it affect them, it affects everybody in the household. So we've seen some of the same things in terms of the myocarditis that was mentioned, but we've seen it a lot more not associated with the vaccine, but we know that risk is there. I'm done. I'm sorry.
Okay. I'll actually chime in now. I'm Dr. Watson. I'm a pediatric neurologist at the same hospital that Dr. Touchstone's work at Children's Hospital, Michigan. And I did want to add an important point about the myocarditis as well. The research that Pfizer did when they were studying the vaccine for this age group, out of those kids, they had over 2,000 kids. None of those kids who were vaccinated had that risk factor or that myocarditis. So I think that's an important thing to mention as well. And I feel like Pfizer, they chose Pfizer because Pfizer did such an excellent job with showing the data, and and I believe that's why the FDA chose that vaccine for children. And they were able to show that it was safe in their research, and none of them had myocarditis. But we know the risk of MISC is death. So weighing that risk and the benefit, I definitely know that having the virus is deathly, and that having a vaccine is likely not. So I just wanted to add that point.
Is this a good time to ask questions? We have a question on our Facebook feed. Good time?
Sure.
Okay. Someone asked, my son has Down syndrome. He's nonverbal. Do you recommend that he get the vaccine? He has no other health problems.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And there's another question said, I have a 4-year-old grandson. How do you protect children younger than 4 since there's no vaccine for their age group?
You protect them by wearing masks, washing your hands, having them wear masks, wash their hands, not touch their face. Question who's coming into your household if the child is pretty much staying at home, and as well as being careful where you take your child at that age. Recently, and I'm just going to talk about, and I hate anecdotal stories, but yesterday, 2 days ago, I worked in the emergency department. I tested 9 children, 7 of them came back positive. And of that, 3 of the parents just swore that their kids were not going to have COVID-19, and they did. One of the kids, the sibling goes to school. So when the sibling came home and brought the virus to the household, and more than likely the mom was sick too because she was sniffling during the exam. So she probably has COVID as well. So the main thing is for that child, because ideally you want them to go to school. And if that's what you're choosing, instead of doing virtual and having your child go to school, make sure at school they're wearing the mask, washing their hands. When they come home, trying your best to still do some type of protection when the child get home. You may not want to quarantine one child for the other, or you may, that's just kind of your choice, but doing everything you can do once that child comes into the house, because that risk is now coming back into the household.
Also, get yourself vaccinated and get any other older kids in the house vaccinated, and encourage everyone you know to get themselves vaccinated, because the more people who are vaccinated, the less likely your kids are going to ever get in contact with COVID.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Dr. Norris Polk. I was listening and learning with all the esteemed physicians on the line. I am an adolescent and also a pediatrician in the community, trained at Children's Hospital and University of Michigan. I think that everything each one of these esteemed physicians has said is correct. You've got statistical information, you've got real life stories from Dr. Touchstone, you've got information from Dr. Bryant. My whole focus is not just the pediatric vaccine. Our program in the community, I work for Detroit Community Health Connection. We have over 15,000 unduplicated visits per year. And our program is called Vaccinate All, from the pediatric population all the way through young adults, adolescents, and also the young adolescent seniors. So we're looking at from the youngest to the oldest. My message to all of you is, yes, we're focusing on pediatric vaccine, but that basically you can get a vaccine now from 5 to about up to 105 of the young. And so the most important message that I want to deliver to you this morning is to follow your science, listen to the trusted advisors in the community, be aware of what the science is, know as physicians and providers that we are basically in an area that we have become experts very quickly on this subject because we had to. And we are the trusted voices for you in the community. There are a lot of myths, there's a lot of misinformation concerning vaccines across all age groups. We don't need to focus on what the minor side effects and things are. We have experts to do that. But if you go to somebody that has been taking care of you for all of your life, you trust them to take care of your children, listen to the advice of your trusted advisors, because the vaccines are safe and effective, not just for the COVID, but for the flu shot and all others. So please, please, please vaccinate all. Make sure you follow your trusted advisors and continue to keep our community safe at large.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Pope. Reverend Medley, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, I just recently was watching CNN, Dr. Gupta, and they were talking about it's no longer a respiratory disease. It's now starting to attack, I don't know the proper term for when it attacks the veins and things like that. What is that all about?
Once again, more information from a lot of talking heads. You get a lot of information given to you on social media, broadcast media, your boo next door, that people don't know exactly what they're talking about. It is still a respiratory disease, and I'm sure all the doctors on here can chime in to say that, but there are different components. A virus does not just attack a lung, it attacks the whole body. And so consequently, you have infection, inflammation, and reaction whenever a virus enters your body, whether it be the common cold, whether it be any virus that attacks your heart or your lung. So once again, I would not really focus, Reverend, on what you hear from the talking heads. That's why we got in this conundrum we're in today. We got all of this medical information being actually just shrouded on our community. And you turn to one station, one person says one thing, you turn to another station, somebody else is saying something else. Trust your community doctors. Trust the people who have been taking care of you all of your lives. Dr. Gupta is a very, very well-respected physician in his own right. I don't know when the last time he touched a patient, God bless him. But anyway, look at the people who are actually working in the community and taking care of y'all. That is the most important message.
Okay, I have a couple of questions in the chat. It says, what discussion can you have with the daycare to voice your concerns about younger children being exposed from adults that will not wear masks or are not vaccinated? Are there any rules for daycares that you all know of?
There are no rules. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so this is Dr. S. Kosser. I'm pediatrician for Dr. Duckworth's 3 beautiful children. And that was my brother that you heard from, who is the pediatric cardiologist. But as far as I'm aware, within Wayne County, at least, the health department hasn't got specific requirements right now for the daycares, especially, within the, younger age groups of kids. I know that for, school-aged kids, they have requirements for masking within the schools. But unfortunately, I don't think those same rules are applying to the daycares, especially because those are private businesses.
Okay, thank you. There's another question that says, I have a friend who has adopted children. Her concern is not knowing the family history. How should this unknown situation impact her decision to have the children vaccinated because she knows no family history of the children that she has adopted?
It should not impact it at all. She should still go ahead and get them vaccinated. Just like the vaccines, other vaccines, she should go ahead and get them vaccinated even without knowing the family history. Because little with the family history is going to change the vaccination opinion in terms of giving the vaccination anyway.
Okay.
I have another question from our Facebook viewers. Are there any instances in which you would not recommend the vaccine?
I think the only contraindication to give, the vaccine would be an history of allergy to one of the vaccine components. As far as I'm aware, that is currently the only contraindication we have.
I would also add that if your child does have like a febrile illness at the time, then you may want to talk to your pediatrician before getting the vaccine, because you want to make sure that you don't have COVID or you have some other type of illness. And then I also want to put in special consideration for people who are their immune system is compromised for whatever reason. So I think that's even more of a reason that we really need to focus on everyone getting vaccinated, because there will be some people who cannot get the vaccine even if they wanted to. So we also have to protect those people.
Okay, I know one of the prevailing thoughts were going on was for certain parents who may have children whose size is bigger than 5 or bigger than 11, as far as their body weight, their body size, but they're sticking specifically with age. Can you tell or can you share what's the difference? Because, you know, of course, there's some medicines where they, based upon the weight of the child, that kind of thing. But with this vaccine, they're sticking to the age specifics. Can you explain the difference between a child who may be 7 and weigh 120 pounds, not being advised to take the vaccine, whereas if it was a certain medicine, they may be able to take a particular dosage of medicine in that same scenario?
I guess I can try to fill this one. Vaccines are basically on a standard dose, and the doses that they're given, it's not based on what you're talking about, kilo or weight per medication. As far as a lot of medications, like we dose for antibiotics and cold medicines based on the weight of the child. But as far as any vaccine that's given, is given in a standard dose. And that standard dose is basically based on the clinical trials in which the children go through. And you look for not basically weight specifics, but you look for reactivity or immunogenicity after the vaccine has been given. So the weight really doesn't make a difference unless that weight is somebody that is in an obesity category and they have hypertension or some other concomitant or comorbid conditions with that particular weight issue. Still, that is still no reason not to give the vaccine, because the vaccine for the pediatric population is in a standard dose. And there are no weight restrictions as far as I know. And some other doctors can back me up on this, that I've read that that would be a contraindication for the vaccine itself.
Okay.
Yeah, so I completely agree with him. We give vaccines in my office, down to infants, right? So we have a large number of different vaccines that we give to children. None of them are based on weight. There is only in newborns who are premature a minimum weight requirement for them to receive a vaccine. That is the only age group in which weight is used to determine whether or not the child can receive a vaccine. Beyond that premature infant, all of the doses of vaccines, whether you're talking about tetanus or polio or measles or any other vaccination, it is based solely on age. It is never based on weight.
Okay. Sister Yates has her hand up, and then I will read a question that's in the chat.
Thank you. I have a friend whose daughter had, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Guillain-Barré syndrome, and her doctor has recommended that she not get the vaccination. Can you explain why?
Is it Chiari malformation or Guillain-Barré syndrome?
Guillain-Barré.
Okay. So there have been some reports in the past of vaccinations being connected to Guillain-Barré syndrome, or we'll just call it GBS. So I believe that's why that physician recommended that to the mom. So there has been cases after a patient will get a vaccine, they will become severely weak because it's attacking their nervous system. But so far, there has been no reported cases in the studies for the COVID vaccine. So I would personally, I'm as a neurologist, not say that's a contraindication, but again, that's something that you want to keep in the back of your mind. I'm very happy that she talked to her doctor, because that's what you want to do first. So I would tell her, trust her doctor, but I would say maybe some physicians will have their own opinion about it. And I would say that would be safe.
Okay. Next question. My daughter has a classmate who would like to get vaccinated. Her parents are against it. I know it is totally up to the parents, but what suggestions can my daughter give to her friend to encourage her parents to get her vaccinated?
Dr. Duckworth, one of them, tell them that this is a spiritual call, pray for them, because that's what they need. They need prayer and spiritual guidance. Ask them to come to your church so you can talk to them face to face. And I'm going to shut up.
She may want to tell her friend, and it may not work. Say, hey, I really want to be able to get to the point where I can be with my friends and participate in sports and be safe at school and not have to worry about grandmother and everybody else. So could you please let me have the vaccine, because I want to play with my friends. That is the only thing I could think the little girl can say to her parents. And they probably still make their own choices of whether or not they're going to vaccinate her.
Excuse me, Dr. Touchdown. Let me say one other thing, Dr. Duckworth. In our community, I work in the inner city, and we know we have a huge problem with vaccine hesitancy. I have been out in the community going from church to church, corner to corner. And I think the most important thing as we seriously approach this issue, our population and people that look like us are the ones that are most severely affected and always left behind. And that's what I start with on my initial approach to anybody that's hesitancy. And the other thing that is hesitant, the other thing is we talk to our people and not at them. We continue to give them as much information as possible. And I tell them all the time, do you think that I would be out here on a corner on a Saturday promoting this when I could be laying somewhere else chilling and talking to you about a vaccine if I didn't believe in it? And then I give them some historical perspective of what I've done during my practice and what has happened in my family and with my church and with people who have actually died because they have been unvaccinated. These are real life stories. So I think we have to hit people, meet them where they are. As Dr. Touchstone said, give them all the information, but don't give up on them. Like you don't give up on us, Dr. Duckworth, we cannot give up on them. And we have to constantly and consistently go back with that message over and over and over again, so that one person that's unvaccinated becomes vaccinated. It's a win for all.
I agree with Dr. Polk with that. Actually, I was at a family event yesterday, and I've been talking to different groups and everything about that. And I agree, it's a meeting people where they are, as well as being real. So when somebody at this point tells me they're still doing the research, I tell them it's not that much research in the world. You have made a decision not to get the vaccine. So be honest with yourself. Why aren't you getting the vaccine? So we can have a real conversation. And then once we got to the point saying, hey, you know, I still just don't trust it, or people are still getting COVID even though they had the vaccine, or I'm healthy and I'm a vegetarian, I think I can get through it, or whatever it is. So you can have a real conversation where they are and like coming back to them. So that's what I've said. A lot of times I've started off, you know what, doctors were one of the first ones to get this vaccine. They're not about to kill off all these doctors. So let's let that be perhaps a point to like, oh yeah, they're not killing off all these doctors. So maybe I should at least consider that. So I agree. I try to meet them where they are and have a real conversation, no matter what it is. That's what they're feeling. That's what their viewpoint is. So have that discussion based on what their needs are.
Okay, here's another one of those kind of questions that you sort of him to as far as relates to those that are anti-vax. It says a lot of people who are against the vaccine claim it's because there are stem cells from an abortion. Can you share how this information evolved? Because that was one of the things that I've heard people also say, that it's, you know, aborted fetus, their stem cells are included, their ingredients, and this is one of the reasons why they were using to get that excuse. So can you share any information on that, anyone?
Oh, let me chime in on this one. That's not a new one either. I mean, you know, it's as much as people are telling me once you got the vaccine, you put a magnet on you, they can follow you around around the neighborhood. I think we have so much information in all seriousness, and kind of actually defining what is the source. That is first thing. I had a brother on the corner tell me the other day that, you know, it was going to affect his ability to, you know, procreate, to have baby. Well, he was damn near 7, excuse me, Reverend. And so consequently, I said to him, excuse me, Reverend, keep praying for me. I was saying to him, well, I think your reproductive days are quite just about over. I'm being real with him, Dr. Touchdown. At 7, if you're looking to make a baby at this point in time in your life, you're a little late in the game. But anyway, back to the question on the stem cell. On the stem cells, once again, a lot of misinformation. You're reading a lot of stuff on social media, a lot of stuff that has no validity, it has no foundation, there are no educational resources behind it. So when you read stuff, what I would implore everybody to do is consider the source, and consider the source. If you're getting information from Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and you don't have any valid resource, and it's not a medical journal, and it's not your trusted resource in the community, then disregard it.
Okay. Okay. Are there any other questions that anyone has related to those in that age bracket, 5 to 11, that are now going to be taken? And I guess, again, that was one of the things that I've even talked with persons that I've tried to encourage to get the vaccine. And that was one of the concerns they had, that they didn't want, you know, they wanted to be parents one day and they didn't want that. So, and I would imagine that's probably could be also a barrier for younger children. I guess Dr. Pope has spoken to that. He talked about the Abraham situation. But now what about a younger person who hasn't got to that point yet? Would that still pretty much apply the same way as it relates to, because there may be some parents that are concerned about their daughters or their sons getting this vaccination because they don't want them to prohibit them from becoming parents someday.
Well, per the studies, it has not had any effect on infertility for both females and males, and the OBGYN community and their association has said so. I know it mentions it with the AAP, and it's out there that it does not have an effect on the fertility, and they're going to continue to watch this, but it does not have any effect. And remember, we're not the first country to get this, and so there are other countries. This is a universal, I guess we would say, or global look at what the effects are of the different vaccines and diseases and everything. So it is stated that it has no effect on the fertility and I would look to the OBGYNs for sure saying that, as well as it's been stated with the AAP and the CDC.
Okay, and then there's another question relates to boosters, I guess, for children, for those that in the age bracket 12 and up, and then for those that's in this age bracket, do you foresee potential of a booster, or is that sort of wait and see how things mutate as we continue to try to get more people vaccinated? But if the hesitancy continues, the probability of a booster for the 5 to 11 as well as the 12 and above.
Once again, Doctor, I believe that is, Dr. Duckworth, that is a wait and see sort of thing. This is a brand new virus. You know, we were not faced with this 5, 10, 15 years ago. And viruses change. That is the way they react in the body. They change, they mutate. And so we'd have to look at historical medical trends. When we look back at smallpox, we look back at all of the diseases that we have eliminated over time through very robust and vigorous vaccine programs to eliminate a lot of these diseases from our children. That's why we as pediatricians and healthcare providers promote vaccines and immunizations across the board, because we know they work. We know that viruses come and go, and that there may be some mutation or another booster that's needed. At this point in time, we are like 2 years into this whole pandemic mess that we find ourselves. And so we as physicians don't have all the answers. All we have to do is look at historical perspective, what the science and research has shown us in the past, and move forward. And so that's not really an answer, but that is a statement of fact as we move forward.
Okay. Any other pediatricians want to chime in? Dr.
I would
Rossi?
think that there were going to be
Oh.
boosters because we just got our booster. So I'm thinking if you go with that same trend, that there will be. And the reason they did boosters because they're looking to see how long, they've been looking to see how long the antibiotics are lasting in your body after the actual vaccine. And with that, that's kind of the determination of a booster, no booster, when you'll get the booster and everything. So for those who got Pfizer at the very beginning, we're now getting the booster shots now. So I would say, I think so, but I think only time will tell with that, but I would say yes.
Okay. Now, another question that came up is, because at one time they initially were saying, do the flu and the vaccine separate from each other. Then they said you could have it at the same time. So I guess it relates to children. Is it something that you give at the same time, or would you recommend a 2-week window between the two? Or how would we deal? Our children just had the flu shot last week, but as we're looking for the vaccine, we just, in case that wasn't the case, if we wanted to have both at the same time, what would be your advice for that?
So you can absolutely get the vaccines together at the same time. There's no contraindication to that. I would say, being very honest with your kids, letting them know or prepping them that there may be a lot. So they may experience some pain. They may feel a little sick after, especially getting both of them together. So in that case, you could treat fevers and everything else that you need to after. But yes, you can absolutely get them together.
Okay. Another question is, so will we have to get a booster yearly? And I guess this is probably another wait and see kind of thing to be on the safe side, because you could actually say no, and then it may change because of the hesitancy and the rise in the cases. So that's another wait and see. Okay. There was another question that said, is there any information on one who had the virus, on whether there is she has still condition? I don't know if that's what she meant. Deacon Nichols, could you share with us what you were asking so that I'm conveying your question correctly? Can you unmute and share with us? She'll come on eventually. She's one of our 80 plus who's very fluent on our Zoom. So I'm certain she will definitely share at some point. Do we have any other Facebook questions, Sister Johnson?
No more from Facebook, but I do have a question.
Yes.
I recently read a news article where a 6-year-old got vaccinated, and then I want to say the day after, maybe some days after, must have fell ill and was tested positive for COVID. She also attended a school where the mask mandate was not in place. Now, on a different story, I had an adult who was vaccinated, and then swore up and down following maybe like 4 or 5 days later, became ill, got tested, did not have COVID. I guess it was some flu or something, but swore up and down, it was because they got the vaccine. So what would you have to say to individuals who believe that because they get vaccinated, that you're giving them the virus also? So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, once again, this is Dr. Polk. I would say you have to educate and be patient. As Dr. Touchstone, I believe, said earlier, some folks are not going to get it regardless of what you say or what you do. And there are always going to be negative responses that, they gave me the virus and that's why I got sick. So once people make up their minds to believe one thing or the other, all you can do is be patient and try to give them as much information as you have on hand and continue to educate and follow the signs.
The other thing
that question is based on them saying that if you get the vaccine, you can become sterile. I want to know if people who have had the virus and were affected, is there any study on whether there's any sterilization in those people?
Not that I know of it, that I've read. I know this will be something that they will be looking at in terms of the vaccine, as well as those who did get the virus itself. I had not seen or read that in terms of sterility for those who did actually have COVID-19. I'm not sure if anyone else has seen anything, but I have not. And then I was going to make a comment. I'm trying to think about what we were talking. Oh, before, if you get the vaccine, usually some people have symptoms 48 to 72 hours after the vaccine, which could be pain at the site, maybe some swelling, some headache. And then when I say swelling at the site, for some people, headache, fever, just feeling tired. They can have those symptoms after the vaccine. It does not happen to everyone. I had no symptoms for all three of them. I had no symptoms at all. I know people who did have symptoms. So with that person feeling ill after it, it could just been effects of the vaccine itself. The other thing is the fact that you got the vaccine and the next day or two you tested positive, you probably had the COVID virus anyway, because it is not coming from the vaccine itself. There's no live vaccine there's no live virus in the vaccine.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. You can't get COVID from the vaccine. The vaccine is not an actual virus being given, right? And the other important point, as far as like people that tested positive a few days after the vaccine, when you get exposed, it takes several days before you start having symptoms. So they probably got exposed before they got the vaccine. The vaccine takes time to work after you got it. So if you just got the vaccine, it might be a couple of weeks before it's fully in effect. And the vaccine is not 100% effective. Nothing in life is 100%. And so while some people who got the vaccine may still get COVID, there's the risk of getting COVID is way, way, way less of getting it than if you didn't have the vaccine. And if you do get COVID after getting the vaccine, the likelihood of getting really ill and being in the hospital is way, way, way less than people who got COVID without the vaccine. And the risk of death after, if you've had the vaccine and got COVID and got sick, is close to zero. It's very, very, very rare unless you have some severe underlying illness or high risk condition. So while it's not 100%, nothing is 100%, it's still really, really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
We do. Are there any other questions that anyone have? Or if not, then if there's any statements that you doctors would like to have. Oh, here's one. Does a positive antibody test only come from having COVID? And for instance, it said fully vaccinated.
So anyone who has been vaccinated will have antibodies to the virus. So if you just had a positive antibody test, to my knowledge, there's no easy way of distinguishing, and the other physicians may have more information. You can't distinguish between whether you got those antibodies from the virus or if you got those antibodies from the vaccine.
Okay.
In the standard antibody tests.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just saying having had COVID. So, okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions? And I would take it that every pediatrician on here would recommend, as Dr. Koster knows, I have a set of 11-year-old triplets that she's been taking care of since they came.
Yeah.
And so we've entrusted her to it, as she has, she was very real with us about it, and she shared, and she said, if you want to wait and see, you definitely can. But she has shared that she has gotten her daughter vaccinated, and I see many of the other doctors on here, you also have said the same thing. So I would safe to say it's strongly your recommendation that we vaccinate our children to protect them, particularly if they are in school. Anyway, but even more if they are in school. And ours, we kept them home last year, but we sent them back to school this year. And so we are definitely getting ready for them to get the vaccination. So we will be set up another appointment, Dr. Cole.
That is going to be wonderful. I look forward to that. Yeah, I have a 10 and now 12-year-old. She was 11. She turned 12 on November the 9th. So she received the 11-year-old dose for her first dose the day after the vaccine was approved. And she will receive the 12-year-old dose for her second dose because she had a birthday right in the middle of that situation. I chose to just get it done as soon as humanly possible. And then, of course, my 10-year-old will get both the pediatric doses, not the older kid doses. And then I have a 3-year-old that I am still going to be masking and waiting anxiously for a vaccine to be available for him.
Any other doctors like to share
Final
thoughts? And again, we are so appreciative you all coming on.
My final thought is another concern that I've heard from a lot of people is they feel like the recommendations keep changing and people giving contradictory information in the media and from Dr. Fauci, things like that, or at least it's perceived as that way. And I want to encourage people to remember that this is a really new disease. This disease has only existed for just under 2 years, and we've only really been actively studying it well for 1.5 to 2 years, right? Most diseases that we treat, we've been studying for decades or centuries, right? So we're still kind of learning, and we're constantly gathering more information and getting more and more and more data and learning more and more about this. So sometimes that means as we learn something new, our recommendations might change. And that doesn't mean we were wrong. It just means we got more information than we used to have, right? And all of our decisions, we can only make decisions based on what information we have, right? So we make the best decision we can based on the data that we've got. And as we get more data, we make updates to it. So remember that if things start to feel like they're shifting or changing, it's just because we're learning more and we're trying to make better and better recommendations. And we're making the best recommendations we've got based on the information we have. So.
And I agree with Dr. Koster is that, once again, I'll go back to my initial statement. Go to the people who have been taking care of you, and your trusted voices. Talk to your pastors, talk to your doctors, your healthcare providers who actually have more knowledge and that are getting educated on this, and continue to follow the science.
And I would just like to add that I have a 5-year-old son who will be receiving the vaccine. I'm really excited about it because for me, I just want to return to some sense of normalcy. And for kids, their social development, attending schools, being able to be active in certain activities, this is very important for them. And I feel like the vaccine is the only way we're ever going to get to some sense of normalcy. So I'm really excited about it. And then I also wanted to make one more comment. There's always a lot of misinformation about what the actual vaccine has in it. And there's only 3 components. So one is this mRNA, or it's basically some information or something that you put into the body to tell your body to produce a protein that's on the virus. So it's not the virus itself, but it's just telling you to produce something like it. And so that way your body produces the antibodies or the soldiers it need, so that if you're ever exposed to the virus, then you're ready to tackle it. You have the soldiers ready. The second thing is fat, and the fat is needed so that the actual vaccine can get inside where it needs to go. And then the third thing is saline, which is in most of the vaccines that kids already receive. And this is just basically trying to keep it stable so that you could store it and it keeps the similar pH that it needs. So those are the only 3 components.
Okay, thank you.
And what I would like to say, I kind of saw a few questions pop up, Pastor Duckworth, as we were talking.
Yes.
One is that, yes, call your pediatrician to see if they have the vaccine. They have to have approval to get the COVID-19 vaccine, but they may have it, because I know the health departments were doing a lot as soon as they got the permission to vaccinate children. They've been doing a lot with the pediatricians. So I would say call your pediatrician to see what their plan is and where they would like for you to go for vaccination. The next thing I saw someone was saying about the schools are only, and I guess this is some schools, are only having the kids around a COVID positive child vaccine quarantine, not the entire classroom. I think it depends on your school system. It seems like they would be contacting what I'm familiar with, the kids in that class or who've had contact with that positive child for testing. So I think you have to move accordingly in terms of your exposure. And then my last words would be stay safe, get your children vaccinated, and see you in hopefully face-to-face contact one day soon. We can get back to somewhat normal.
All right. Well, we appreciate.
Pastor Duckworth?
Yes.
And you may have answered this when you talked about the connection with the doctors. And but there's a question on Facebook that says, so will the COVID vaccine become one of the standard vaccines required for children along with the others that will allow them to attend school in the future?
I think it's too early to tell. I think it's one of those things we have to wait and see. It may be more where it's going to be like the flu vaccine and not your standard vaccines. It may be something that if we can get herd immunity, take some control of this, that this could perhaps go away. We won't need it. I think it's only time, like Dr. Polk was saying, that we'll be able to know what the future will hold when it comes to this vaccine. And Dr. Duckworth, thank you for inviting us. We do it in the church. Thank you so much for inviting us and having this session. And I just personally am impressed with that headphone set you have on. I was just like, oh, this is definitely different. Thank you very much. I feel like I'm on a radio station.
Well, we to all of the physicians that have come to take time out of your extremely busy schedules to help us as parents and as grandparents, as aunts, uncles, cousins, and them to feel more comfortable and feel more relieved as we have to make the decision for our children for their best health and their future. So definitely thankful to all of the doctors that have come on, and Dr. Kosser from Chicago, who's in a whole different time frame, a whole different time zone, Central Time, which means that he could have been really chilling, but he decided to join us today. So we are extremely thankful for all of you doctors for sharing sharing with us this information, and we record it. So this will be a part of our archives as far as our Facebook page as well as our YouTube page, so that for those that wanted to be a part of this but wasn't able to make it, perhaps the questions that were raised would be questions that they had. So we are, again, very grateful to all of you doctors for coming to take time out to share with us on this very critical, like I said, situation, because again, it affected me directly because I have children that are in that age bracket. So I wanted to have this first before I would make the final decision. So the decision is now made. The questions I had, many people had, you all have answered them so wonderfully. So again, we thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yes,
All
it's
right.
our pleasure. Absolutely.
All right. All right, GMBC, Sister Johnson, you can take it down and we'll have a word of prayer. The doctors are welcome to stay along for a word of prayer if you would like, and then we will be dismissing. We generally try to keep it to an hour, but I always give leeway when there's questions and answers. Yes.
Just wanted to remind everyone about the Zoom meeting with Dr. White at 6 o'clock on Thursday, the 18th.
Yes, on Thursday the 18th, there is a grief special for during the holidays with Dr. Samuel White will be on for the Zoom. So we just wanted to remind everyone, and there will also be information that will be passed out.
Pastor?
Yes.
Uh-oh, Sister Adams was saying something.
Yeah, the Zoom meeting, the number is 734. We're using the original Greece Zoom at 734-721-2557. And the pass number is 29066.
Okay, well,